So for this question, we're going to be using coordinate geometry, and it's a little bit different because it also involves a ratio. So you're told that the ratio of the line is 3:2, and therefore whatever the length of this line is, we've essentially got sort of 5 parts to that length. So there's 5 parts in total, and if we split those up into the 5 parts, then P is such that there are 3 parts this side and 2 parts this side. Okay, so whenever we are working out the coordinate of P, we need to take that into account. It's not simply just finding the midpoint. So we need to show that the coordinates are for 1. So one way that we could do that is to think about how far we've travelled in the x direction. So we've gone from -2 to 8. -2 to 8. So in total, that's a difference of 10. Now, if there's 5 parts in that ratio in total, each kind of step across here is, each step in the x direction is 2. Okay, so this one is going to be on 0, obviously not drawn very well, and then 2, 4, 6, and then 8 at the end. Okay, which means that the y coordinate of P is therefore 4, and one way that we could show that is 10 divided by 5, which is 2, and we know that we want 3 parts into it, so 2 times 3 gives me the 6, and then if I do -2 plus the 6, I get to 4. But also, showing the working out that we've got here on the diagram would also be enough. Okay, so that's in the x direction, and then we can do that again in the y direction. So in the y direction here, we're going from -1 up to 4, so that's a jump of 5. So if there's 5 steps in total, and the jump is 5, then obviously each jump is just 1. So that means that we're going from -1, so this is going to be 0, again obviously not drawn overly well, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So that means that coordinate P is therefore 4, 1. Okay, so there's different bits of working out you could show there, either the kind of more visual work on the diagram, or you can show this, which is also essentially doing the same thing. So for the y coordinates there, you'd have 5 divided by 5 gives you the 1, so we know each step is 1, and this time we're going up in 2 steps from the lowest point, so -1 plus that 2 gives me 1, and therefore my final coordinate is 4, 1. So for the next question, it was the line L is perpendicular to AB and passes through P. So the line L is perpendicular. So if we go back to our original question here, if it's perpendicular, let's just erase everything else that we've got on here, to the original line, that means that it goes at 90 degrees. So it's at 90 degrees and it passes through point P. So that's the line that we're trying to find there. So we know that the coordinates of P are 4, 1, and we need to find the gradient of that perpendicular line. So we can find the gradient of the original line, and then we can use the perpendicular for that as well. So the gradient of the original line is the rise over run, and the rise there goes from -1 to 4, so therefore we have a rise of 5, and the run goes from -2 to 8, which is a run of 10. So therefore the original gradient is going to be 1/2. Okay, -1/2, there we go, because it's going downhill, so it's -5 over 10. Okay, so if we go back to the original question there, we have a gradient of, or the original gradient A to B is -1/2, and therefore the perpendicular gradient, so the perpendicular value of M, is going to be 2. Okay, the gradient of the line we're trying to find is 2. We know that it follows y equals mx plus b, and we know that it goes through the point 4, 1. Okay, it goes through that coordinate p, which they told us even if you didn't get the answer right. So we can put in the coordinate 4, 1. We know that the gradient is 2, and we can now find the b value. Okay, so if we then plug that in, we can find that b is minus 7. So then my final answer is y is equal to 2x minus 7. And that would then be the final answer. So the point C has got coordinates 6, 5, and we need to show that it lies on L. So if it did lie on L, then that means that it would work for that equation. So y is equal to 2x minus 7, and we need to find the coordinates, or we need to show that when we plug in 6, 5, that it works. So 5 is the y value, and x is 6. So that gives me 5 is equal to 12 minus 7. So yes, that works, in which case we've got the final answer there. And then the last one is to find the distance from A to B. So the distance from A to B, again if we go back, so A was minus 2, 4, and B is 8 minus 1. So the distance between them there, we're going to be using Pythagoras to find the length of the hypotenuse. So we know that it goes from 10 along the bottom and 5 up the side. So using Pythagoras then, we have 10 squared plus 5 squared is equal to the length squared. And either you can type that into the GDC or you can solve that by hand, and you end up with the square root of 125, which if we write that in surds is 5 root 5. So either of those two answers would be fine. And then the last one is to calculate the area of the triangle ABC. So C was the coordinates 6, 5. So 6, 5 is somewhere up here. Maybe it's more here because it goes through this line. So 6, 5. And we need to try and find the area of the triangle here. Okay, so it's this area that we're trying to find. So to work this one out, one thing we might want to think about is that the area of the triangle is the perpendicular height. So going from the tallest to the smallest part between these 2 points, times by the length, so the horizontal length, which goes from these 2 parts. So the length we know is 10, and the height goes from minus 1 to 5, which is 6. So therefore we have 10 times 6, which is 60, and then we need to half that answer because it's a triangle, and therefore the final one there is 30.